It's DEANNE, I'm an addict. I think it's this podium because I speak at a lot of meetings, or whenever I do, I don't feel like I get that nervous, and right now I'm pretty nervous. I'm intimidated by microphones. And it's really hot in here. Anyway, the easiest way for me to speak at meetings so I don't get too nervous or off track is to talk about how it was for me, and then how I got here and how I stay here. So I don't get too lost. I think that's what I'm going to do. I come from a pretty big family. I'm the fifth out of 6 kids. I don't know if it was dysfunctional or not. I know that when I did the wrong thing, I got in trouble. My punishment was pretty severe, and it had a pretty big impact on my life. I always felt like the black sheep, and I always ran as hard as I could to get away from that feeling. When I was about 14 or 15 is when I started using. I found a group of people in Old Greenbelt that partied. And, all my life I tried fitting in, and I wasn't, athletic, so I didn't fit in with them people. And I wasn't smart, so I didn't fit in with the smart kids. So the people that accepted me the most easily were the ones that were all getting high, because, all of us just kind of meshed in together. And so I just started using, and I went to a private school for the first 9 years of my education. I failed my 9th, and my parents said that if you're going to, not bother trying, then we're not going to bother paying for as much as it was costing. So I went to a public school in Greenbelt, and that's pretty much when everything took off. I was smoking pot and drinking, and I can remember the first time I drank, and I can remember the first time I smoked a cigarette, and both times were very unpleasant experiences, and they weren't normal. The first night I drank 6 Busch beers, and I drank them as fast as I could. And I didn't know that I could just get drunk on a few of them. I thought that I had to drink them really fast, and before I knew it, I was being told the next day what had happened. So I ended up in a blackout, obviously. And that's kind of the way I used. I ended up not doing a whole lot for a good 6 months or so, other than those 2 drugs, and then I got turned on to some other things, and it just progressed on down the line. I found some drugs that I really enjoyed, hallucinogens, and because I would take acid, and we would just laugh all night long. We used to try directing traffic on Greenbelt Road, at 3 in the morning, and this was entertaining. When for real, we could have been killed many times over standing in the middle of a 4-lane highway, but we just, we were kids, and it was fun. My perception of things has always been pretty screwed up. So fun for me at that age was not fun for a normal kid, I don't think. But anyways, to skip a few years, I gotten mixed up with some people that were doing some other drugs that I hadn't yet experienced, and I was all proud of myself that I was not familiar with those drugs, and then real soon after that, I became familiar with them because I wanted to feel like those people felt. I wanted to, look like an idiot and walk like an idiot and talk like an idiot. And, it looked entertaining, so I did it. And I fit right in. I was an idiot. And one time, I was going out with this guy who found out that his ex-girlfriend had hepatitis. And I didn't know what that was or what it was caused by or anything. And he told me that she got it from when they used to shoot drugs. And I don't know what was wrong with me, but I told him that I wanted to do it. I told him I wanted to try it. And he said no, and over my dead body. And I don't care for that guy a whole lot right now because he's still using. I see him once in a blue moon. He's a real smart ass. But I'm grateful that he was smart enough not to let me try that drug because he saw me freebasing cocaine and how, heavy and hard I hit that. And he said, you're not going to just try it one time. And that was my only option. That was the only person that was around me that ever shot any kind of drugs that had the experience that could have shown me how to do it. And I am grateful that experience didn't become one of mine. It's a not yet, and I can choose to make sure that it stays a not yet, a day at a time. But anyways, I saw that guy when I had a couple months clean, and I was all proud of myself. I had a couple keychains hanging from my side, and I was bragging about Narcotics Anonymous, as I always do. And he said, well, free drugs are better than being drug-free. And I was ready to kill him. I was little patience, I guess you could say. So as much as I wanted to dislike him because of his attitude, I had to still appreciate the fact that if it weren't for him, I might have ended up shooting drugs. And I don't know that I'd have been able to ever make it to Narcotics Anonymous. I tell this story a lot because it has a lot to do with my makeup of who I am. All my brothers and sisters graduated from high school, even my little brother. And I had failed quite a few years, and my dad bet me that I could never graduate. You know, because I was a worthless piece of shit. You'll never amount to anything, blah, blah, blah. And just to spite him, not for any other reason, but just to spite him, I said, I bet. He said, how much? I said, $100. So he bet me. We shook hands. And a year and a half later, after a whole lot of work and kicking and screaming, I got my diploma. I went to night school, and I went to summer school, and I had to get a job to pay for them because they refused, and had to go to my regular, high school. So it was a pain in the ass, and I really wasn't up for it. And everybody that I hung out with had already dropped out. So there was nobody left even in my high school that I even associated with. They were all a year younger than me. So my class had already dropped out, and anybody that I did know was, already gone. But that was one of probably the best feelings I ever got in my life, is when I was able to walk across that stage. And it was in summer school, so it wasn't like the whole, ceremony and the whole ta-da. But I got to walk across the stage and get a piece of paper that meant a whole lot to me. But anyways, my dad gave me the $100, and it was a check, and I gave it to my mom, and she gave me a $100 bill. And I'll never forget this day. I looked up in the sky, and there was a rainbow, and I just knew it was like a magical day for me. And I went down to this place called the Log Cabin in Greenbelt, and I had somebody go get us a keg of beer, and the party was on me because I deserved it. And anyway, from then on, things were progressively getting worse. I was introduced to crack cocaine. A girlfriend of mine that I used with called me up, and she was in Fort Lauderdale, and she was crying and told me she hadn't eaten in 3 days, and she wanted to come home, and the guy that she was with was abusing her. And I got real freaked out. I worried, she was like a little sister to me. So I packed a bag, I left, called my boss, told him I had to leave my job, and I left, and I drove down to Fort Lauderdale. And, of course, before I went, I had to get some Coke because I had to stay awake for the trip. And, like, maybe 3 hours into the trip, I didn't have anything left, and I had asked this guy to ride along with me, and he was sleeping, and I tried to wake him up, and he didn't wake up. And before I knew it, I woke up sideswiping a guardrail on a bridge in North Carolina. And if it weren't for that guardrail, I'd have been in the water and dead, probably. But that didn't shake me up at all. I climbed out the window like Dukes of Hazzard, and I looked, and I was like, oh, my God. I hadn't even made my first car payment on the car. It was a mess. But we went on down to Fort Lauderdale, and when we got there, she was all better because, she got her fix in the meantime of the, 16-hour trip or whatever. She said, well, I'm fine. I don't want to go home. I said, bullshit. I said, I didn't drive down here 16 hours for you to tell me never mind. So she goes, okay, I'll go, but you have to try this stuff. I said, all right, whatever. She was staying in a hotel room, and they had a TV on one of those stands in the corner, and we ripped it off the wall, and we went and we sold it, and there was people selling crack on the streets from 6 to 60, okay? I was freaking out. I'd never seen this. Everywhere I used, I've never seen such young drug dealers or old drug dealers. And I was mesmerized, but we took the TV, and we went, and they took the TV, and we got some crack. We went back to the room, and there it was. I found a new one. And so I wasn't in any hurry to leave either. And I called back up to Greenbelt, and I had her dad wire me some money because I told him I ran out of money getting down there. So for us to get home, we needed more money. So he wired us some, and that was gone. I called him back with some flat tire excuse, so we got more, and that was gone. And the only thing I had left was my mom's Exxon credit card. I couldn't very well use that in Florida because I couldn't explain it. But what ended up happening is I went outside, and I showed my car to one of the drug dealers, and I asked them how much they'd give me for it. And this is where I was in my drug addiction. I didn't even realize what I was doing, and I wanted to sell my car for crack, and I hadn't even made the first payment on it. And I'll never forget, the guy told me 11 racks, and had he told me 100, I would have probably done it, but he said 11, and I said, forget it. We got to go. So we got in the car, and we had enough gas just to cross the line, so we didn't have to get gas in Florida, which was cool. I could explain going partway to Florida, but not all the way when the bill came in. So we ended up getting home, and, you know, I had to explain where I'd been for 3 days. I had to explain the credit card use in South Carolina, North Carolina. I had to explain the dent all the way down my brand new car. I was a mess, you know, but this drug, for whatever reason, you know, made me, it just took control. I don't know. It made me feel just like any other drug the first or second time. It made me feel something I've never felt before. It made me feel all those things I wanted to feel. Like I was all that, like I was so pretty, like I was so popular, like I was so rich, like I was, you know, it made me feel all these things that I've always wanted to feel. And it wasn't too much longer after that when crack hit the streets up here, and I found it. It didn't take me any time whatsoever. And I was over in Parkview Gardens a couple months before I got clean. I won't even drive near that place now. But we were over there, and, you know, I was doing what I had to do to get mine. And I'm ashamed. I was ashamed of some of the stuff I was doing. But, you know, thank God to this program. I can tell you, jump ahead for a second, because of some of those steps that I've worked, I don't have to feel like that anymore. But what happened is I ended up hitting a bottom. I don't know if it was emotional, spiritual, whatever, financial. It was everything. I hit rock bottom. As far as I was concerned, it was enough. I had enough. And God intervened. I had nothing to do with it. I was down at the center in Greenbelt. I had given somebody some money to go get me something. While they were gone, this good-looking guy pulls up in this fancy car. Money signs flashed in my eyes. That's all I thought was like, betcha he's got some money. You know, so I went over and I did my little maneuver and shaking my hips a little bit. And I was just trying to be cute, trying to make conversation, because maybe he had something that, you know, some money or something if he wanted to get me high or whatever. But I noticed real quick he was biting on his mustache, you know, and that was the instant, I know he's been doing coke, because, you know, little idiosyncrasies we have with biting on our face and, you know, stuff like that. It looked like something to me. So anyway, I tried laying this, I don't know what I tried saying, but whatever it was, I thought he was getting high, and he leaned in his car and he pulled out his medallion and he said, "Here, look at this." And I thought it was like a coin from another country or something. I'm like, what? You know, I'm looking at it, I can't even see it. I'm all high up anyway. And he said, "You know, I used to shoot drugs, and I used to feel like you look like you probably feel." And I was like, "How do you know how I feel?" I was a lot thinner than I am now. And he said, "Well, when was the last time you ate?" And I said, "Monday." He said, "Well, today's Wednesday." I said, "Oh." You know, and I didn't eat, that didn't matter to me. That was like nothing new. Because when I was using, I didn't care about eating or bathing or, you know, doing anything that I was supposed to do that most normal people do. He said, "How about taking a ride with me? I'll get you something to eat." And I said, all right. He was pretty brave. I don't know what step he was working. It didn't matter, you know. I don't care what step he was working. He introduced me to Narcotics Anonymous, you know, for real. And later on, people said what step he was working, and I said, well, that's your opinion. But the bottom line is, if he wasn't not working a program or working a program, I might never have found this place. But that's how God chose to introduce it to me. And we ended up going, we went to Burger King, got something to eat, then we went back to his apartment, and his roommate was also in recovery. And I don't know, they both had like 3 or 4 years, but to me that was like monumental. That was like, oh my God, I can't imagine. These guys are talking about used to shoot drugs, and now they're up in here and they're straight, you know. And I didn't know about clean and serene and working steps and all this other stuff, but they gave me a meeting list, and they said, why don't you just go and try? And the first one, they told me like there was one the next day, and I said, well, I can't go. I'll be late because of whatever was going on. And he said, a part of a meeting is better than no meeting. And I remembered he said that because there was plenty of times after that when I was making meetings and I didn't want to go because I was going to be late. And I just remembered a part of a meeting is better than no meeting. So that was on a Wednesday, and Friday I ended up at the Laurel Hospital for my first meeting. And there was a bunch of people in there. And I was going to the Paragon afterwards. And I like saying this because this reminds me of how sick I was. I went to this meeting, and I was wearing black pumps and a black leather miniskirt and black fishnets and a red silk shirt, and my hair was all done up. And I looked fresh off the street downtown. I didn't look like I was going to any Narcotics Anonymous meeting. But keep in mind, I really didn't know what I was to expect except for a bunch of drug addicts. Now, I didn't know everybody was going to be clean, working a program, you know, dressing normal. The lifestyle I was living, I looked that way pretty much every day, you know, because I was trying to cover up all them feelings, you know. I was trying not to let you see that I was that shell, that hollow, you know, self-centered, scared little girl. And obviously people, just like if I pictured me like that walking in here right now, I'd say, geez, You know, I didn't look like I was going to a meeting, and people knew I was brand new. You could tell. And some people came up to me after the meeting and gave me, tried giving me phone numbers, and I was like, I wasn't really interested. And plus, when they were giving out chips, I didn't stand up to get one because I couldn't comprehend being applauded for being a drug addict. You know, as bad as I felt about myself, I didn't understand the concept of surrendering, of giving up, of saying, okay, I lost and I'm done. But what happened is a few people just told me, just keep coming back, honey. It'll get better. So I went back, and there was a meeting there the following night. So I went right back to the hospital, and that night I picked up my one-day chip. And I got some phone numbers. You know, all these women were coming up to me, and I hated women for all it was worth. I hated my sisters, my mother, every woman I ever come in contact with, I hated them for numerous reasons, and it was all street stuff. But they were all giving me their phone numbers, and I'll never forget. I went out in the parking lot, and I opened my phone book, and I turned the inside light on, and I was writing next to the names that I could remember, descriptions of each woman. So I remembered who it was when I called them. Like, there was a few that were, like, pregnant or, you know, blonde curly hair, black hair, whatever. So I just wanted to remember who I was calling when I made the calls. And I didn't use those phone numbers, but I kept coming back. You know, I used that meeting list. My first meeting list ended up getting so shriveled, it looked like it had been washed in my jeans or something. But I went to meetings every single day. And what ended up happening in my life is that I was able to build a foundation just of people. You know, I wasn't into working the steps, and I didn't know nothing about getting a sponsor. The only time I had ever heard anything about a sponsor was when I was about 8 years old. I used to do this ride a bike for the retarded every year, and I'd go around Greenbelt getting donations, and them donations never made it to that foundation. They went right into my pocket to the, you know, 5 and dime candy store. So I had the behaviors, you know, long before I ever picked up a drink or a drug. But anyways, people, you know, I ended up asking people, like, what was a sponsor? Is it somebody who's going to, like, sign me up for something? And they said, no, it's just somebody who's going to guide you in the steps. And I said, well, I don't even know what the steps are. And people just told me, just keep coming back, you'll find out. And I did. And one of my, the meetings that I went to most regularly, or every week, I could say, was the Wednesday night Beginner's First 3-Step meeting. And I think that's where I learned a lot about the first 3 steps. And I learned that I was allowed to admit that I was powerless over my addiction. And I like saying this. When they said, and my life had become unmanageable, I said, that is so fancy for saying that my life is, like, I don't even want to say there's too many kids. But you know what I mean. My life was not just unmanageable. It was a frickin' mess. But it was a pretty word to say, you know, yeah, my life's unmanageable. My life was definitely a mess. I had lost my job. I didn't have anywhere to live. Right before I got clean, I got thrown out of where I was living because I admitted that I was doing crack. And the guy that I was living with thought that I was just smoking pot and drinking a lot. And because when I came home, I didn't want to, like, smell too much like Love Boat if I was smoking it, or Jack Daniels, so I would just smoke a bunch of pot and then come home smelling like a factory of marijuana or whatever. But anyways, I went to my mom and dad's house, and I asked them if I could move back in, and my mom saw that I was a wreck. I mean, it was noticeable to anybody. And she said, you can move back in under one condition. She said, you got 30 days to straighten your act up. And I don't know where in that 30 days I met that guy, but it was within those 30 days. And so somewhere in there I ended up finding Narcotics Anonymous, and, you know, that was God. That wasn't me at all. But anyways, I'd also lost my job because the company I was working for was going to shut down their division up here. And they said that you could move to North Carolina, you know, to run a shop down there. And I didn't think that North Carolina had cocaine or crack, so I thought, better not go there. And that was the only reason I didn't go. It was an opportunity of a lifetime for somebody who was 19 or 20 years old. But I didn't feel safe because, you know, who would I know? How would I find my drugs? So anyway, my first year in recovery, I had 9 jobs. I did anything that would give me a paycheck just to get me by, you know. I worked at a High's Dairy store, and I worked at United Van Lines moving furniture, and I worked at a cabinet making shop. You know, it didn't matter to me. I just wanted to have a job because people told me that I needed to keep some of my time occupied. And, you know, if I sit around for 40 hours a week doing nothing, I'm going to use. I mean, I knew that much about me. So I went to meetings every day, and I built a foundation, and I got clean in March of '88, and that summer, it was like picnics and parties and softball every day of the week. It seemed like, and for real, it was probably just every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But looking back, that's how it seemed. Because my life was so empty that when I got here, instantly it became full. There wasn't enough time in a day to do everything I needed to do, and that summer was the best summer of my life. I'll just remember coming from where I came from and doing what I used to do, and then all of a sudden, people wanted me around. People were calling me to do stuff. People were asking me to participate with them in functions and dinners and dances, and I just never was asked to do anything before in my life, and we were talking. I usually use this analogy. I love analogies. Sorry if you've heard them before. You'll hear them again, I'm sure. But I felt like all my life I walked around with my umbilical cord in my hand, and I plugged it in here, and I plugged it in there, and it never fit. And when I found Narcotics Anonymous, it finally fit, and that's how I truly feel in my heart that I finally found home. But what happened is around 7 months clean, I started feeling really uncomfortable with myself, and I ended up finally getting a sponsor. I had had a temporary sponsor, but it was a man, and he said that he would sponsor me until I had a year. And anyways, so when I had 7 months, I was at the Berwyn meeting, and I asked this lady, I said, would you ask your sponsor if you could sponsor me? And I was very much, I don't know, I was needy, I was new, and I still really didn't have much of a clue about life. And she said sure, and she called me later on, and she told me that she could sponsor me. And we started working the steps immediately. And like I said, I'll never forget when I wrote my first step the first time, I was writing all this stuff down. It was almost like it was a mini fourth, because I was like talking about powerlessness and unmanageability in these different areas of my life. And once I was putting it down on paper, I was like, I can't do this first step with somebody, because I still wasn't listening enough or hearing enough at meetings, knowing that all this stuff that I was writing was normal, that this is what all these other addicts that were in these rooms did also. But I just wanted to think, let's just start on that day that I got here and start fresh, but I had to deal with all that past stuff first. And so we started working the steps, and I'm grateful to say that the God of my misunderstanding as a child became the God of my understanding. I don't go into any descriptive nature of my higher power. It works. It works great for me. He saved my life and continues to bless me on a daily basis. And blessings for me in my life every day aren't necessarily things that I'm welcoming, things that I'm asking for. I'm not asking to learn how to be patient. I'm not asking to learn how to be tolerant. But these things happen in my life, and just because they're lessons, I have to be grateful for them. Because if I'm not learning lessons, I'm just not learning, and I don't know, my God works wonders in my life. There's been so many things that have happened over the course of time that I've been here. It's just totally changed my life. I came in here somebody who never had true friends, and I have a lot of true friends now, and I can't even count them on one hand. I have a really special network of people in my life, and it's not just the people I call every day. Everybody in here is special. I got a real attitude at this meeting I was at not too long ago. This girl was talking about winners, and if you're not in my network, then I obviously don't consider you a winner. And I was ready to jump up and say, how dare you? Because for real, anybody that makes it to Narcotics Anonymous is a winner. I don't care where you came from, what you did. I don't care what you're doing today. If you're clean, you're a winner. And I truly believe that. And so that's why I was so offended when she said something about, if you're not in my network, you're not a winner. And I was like, well, obviously your network must be pretty small, because your closed-minded attitude isn't letting all these people in that could just be blessings in your life, And I try not to be that way, but I did hear some good things in that meeting, so it wasn't a total loss. And a girl that I shared with how angry I was about that one particular comment in this hour meeting, she said, well, you really shouldn't have an attitude about that. There was other things I'm sure you heard. And the next day I reflected on one of the things I had heard other than that comment. And she said, see, it worked. And, and Narcotics Anonymous has always worked for me, as long as I'm trying to remain open-minded. I'm not going to like everything I hear, and I'm not going to like everyone I come across, but I have to at least love the people just for attempting to be here. Whether they use or not is not my business. I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm not saying that I haven't, because I have. And I've been judged at the same time, so I know how it feels. That's why I don't do it anymore, because I've been on the other end. And over the years, you know, we learn lessons in here, and I've learned many. Like, I've gossiped, and then I've been gossiped about, you know, and that's not a comfortable place to be. Especially one night, I was gossiped about at a meeting, and I went home, and I had, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years clean. I called my sponsor, and I was crying my eyes out. And I told her what I heard at the meeting about myself, and she said, well, that's not true. I said, I know, isn't that terrible? And she said, well, you know, you just got to keep going back and love them anyway, because some are sicker than others. And I understood that, and, you know, from then on, it's like every time I'm ready to start running my mouth, I think about that situation. I don't want to go through that again. And so in order to prevent it, I have to not enter that ring of gossip. But anyways, that's just one of many things. I used to have a big problem with sponsoring women. From my first sponsee, probably up until the time I had about maybe 6 years clean, every sponsee I had was a hostage. They were all, like, under my wing immediately. I wanted to fix them. I wanted to take care of them. I wanted them to, you know, I wanted to be with them from wake till sleep, day in and day out, because then they were protected. And the real deal is I just wanted that for myself. You know, all my life I wanted that for myself. And I never had it. My sisters left when I was young, before I needed them, really. It was like before I hit 13 years old. Both of my older sisters had moved out, and I felt for a long time that they had moved out on me. And I felt like it was like when they left, I no longer had a role model. I no longer had somebody who was going to tell me how to live life. So I had an attitude for a long time. And then when I had the opportunity to sponsor women, it was that instant big sister role I wanted to take on. And I was in one of my sponsees' anniversaries the other day, and I was listening to what was going on, and I was remembering in my head how I had been as a sponsor in the past. And I was real proud to say that I don't sponsor women like that anymore. The way that I sponsor women is just trying to pass along what's been given to me, not by babysitting them or being their taxi cab or, you know, being their psychologist or anything else, because I don't have a degree, and all I can tell you is what I've learned. I can't tell you what I think you should do. I can tell you what I've done. I try not to... The one word I try to stay away from in meetings when I'm sharing is, you should do this and you should do that. That you should, because I don't know what you should do. Because people have told me that what I do might get you high and what you do might get me high. So I just try to tell you what's worked for me, not what you should do, because I have no earthly clue what you should do. And people didn't teach me like that when I got here either. They didn't say, you should do this and you should do that. They just said, you know, here's the basic steps, here's the basic text, here's the steps, work them, and you can stick around. And I did. And I'm grateful to say that, you know, a couple years later, I got in a space with the steps that I wanted to keep growing, and I didn't feel like I was growing, and my sponsor wasn't a real step pusher. She was exactly what I needed when I needed it. And then I ended up going to meetings for about 6 months, listening to women share just like I did the first time, trying to find a new sponsor. And what I sought out this time was going to be a little bit different than the first time. The first time I just wanted somebody who was calm and like sounded serene and didn't talk very fast, because like I talk really slow compared to how I used to talk. You couldn't even understand me when I used to share. I was like, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, so that's progress, not perfection. So when I found my next sponsor, this woman worked the steps, and she talked the steps, and she lived the steps, and I could tell. And it wasn't just in meetings. It was before the meetings. I would listen from a distance, or I would, you know, be like back to back, and I'd talk to this person. I'd hear over here, and I liked what she was saying, you know. And she wasn't telling them, you should do this and you should do that. And she said, this is what I do. And I really latched onto that. And she's been my sponsor ever since, and we've worked a lot of steps together. And I call her every day. You know, it's not very often when I miss a day, and it's not because I'm needy. It's because I want what she has. And if I want what she has, I got to do what she does, you know, and she told me that that's how it was for her for a long time. And I was going through something with one of my sponsees not too long ago, actually all of them, that I was like, I didn't have much time, you know, and all three of them in a different way let me know that they were hurting because I wasn't around, you know. And it wasn't that I didn't have time for them. I just wasn't making time for them. I was going to school, and I was working full time, and, you know, planning to buy a house and doing all this other stuff. And I forgot for a little while how important it is to give away what I got. I was being selfish, and I wasn't trying to give away what I got. I was just giving it away when I had to, not when I needed to. So I was grateful, you know, that was God working in my life again, kind of just pulling me up on my stuff. And now I've been able to make some dates with my sponsees and keep them. And I like that. Like, I even got a new calendar just so I could start penciling things in. Like, every time I talk to somebody, I won't forget that I, said I'll be there on such and such day. Anyway, we're, okay. So, I'm still nervous. Gets better. You can ask Tracy how I used to sponsor women. She loved it. I've had a lot of great experiences, and the biggest blessing in my life is definitely the people in my life, not the steps that I work, not the feelings that I've felt better about, not the things that I've laid to rest, but the people that I have in my life, because it's the people I have in my life that let me lay those things to rest, that let me be the person I've become. And I tell you, I value that more than anything in the world. Miracles happen all the time, and it's not just the little things, It's like I have a conscious contact with a God of my understanding, and it's almost undescribable or indescribable. He's allowed me to experience so many things that I know I wouldn't have experienced if I didn't come to Narcotics Anonymous. For being somebody like I barely got out of school. I was listening to these two women share about graduating college. And I remembered that old saying, if you want what we got, do what we do. And I was thinking, when they were sharing in the meeting about their graduation, how excited they sounded, I said, I really would like to be in their shoes right now. It couldn't happen overnight. It wasn't going to be just given to me. I had to do something. So I went and I signed up for school. And it freaked me out for the longest time. I think I was even all the way done with that semester until I realized what I had done. I had went up and signed up for school and been somebody who flunked, 3 years in high school. And I ended up getting my report card, and I got an A in speech and a B in English. And I was so excited. I wanted to put it in the Washington Post. You know what I mean? That's how excited I was. A few people only knew who I was and where I came from. But it was definitely one of the most exciting things I've done. I was able to marry my best friend in recovery, and that's something that I never thought I was going to be able to do. I never thought that I was going to find somebody who was going to love me for me. And that meant all my garbage, all my past, all my present, all my possible future. And he does, and he did. And I've watched my wedding video a couple times lately, and it just makes me want to cry, because our wedding invitation was a castle on the front, and it said, "Dreams do come true." And I believe that Narcotics Anonymous, that's like my saying, dreams do come true. Anything I want, I can have, as long as I'm willing to do the footwork and pay the consequences. And a lot of things have happened in my life that I thought were like absolutely impossible. They might be materialistic, but if that's what I have to identify with right now, that's okay. I've been able to lay to rest the past, the person that I was, the person that my dad used to tell me I was. That person is no longer here. I'm not the vengeful, spiteful, evil person I used to be. I felt sorry for people who used to come into my life when I was using, because I knew what they were in for, and they didn't. I've done a lot of traveling in recovery. Frank and I were just talking the other day about when he heard me one time say, "The sky's the limit." I can do anything I want to do. There's no limitations. I don't set any boundaries on myself. I don't set boundaries on my life, in any way. I don't set boundaries up there like walls, with people. If you're in my life, I'm not going to hide anything from you, because I've got nothing to gain from that. And if you don't love me for every bit of, who I am, then that's on you. I don't expect everybody to love me for who I am. People have different pickers, and they don't, want people like that or want people like this, then that's your choice. I'm not begging people to be in my life. I believe that we live by power of example, and the powers of example that I'm following are people that I wish to keep following. And if anybody wishes to be in my life, then so be it. But I'm not forcing people to be in my life. I don't have to tell them about how wonderful I'm doing and how wonderful my life has gotten to have them in my life. in recovery and out of recovery, I used to be famous for buying friendships. I got into a lot of debt buying friendships. And I'm not ashamed to say that today, you know, because I've learned from my own mistakes. And I've learned from other people's mistakes, but mostly from my own. And I sponsor as many women right now as I can, and I don't feel bad about that. I know that if another woman came up to me and asked me to sponsor them, I'd probably have to say no, just because I don't want to spread myself too thin. I want to be able to be fair to all the women that I sponsor. And you know, when you've got a full-time job and a full-time husband and full-time sponsees, and you throw some other stuff in there, you know, your recovery, my recovery can come second, you know, and I'm not going to have any of those things if I don't put my recovery first and keep it first. So just here recently, I picked up a service commitment, and it was really funny, I'll tell you. It's the Friday night meeting that I go to every week, and they were having a group conscience, and this woman took over, and she said, okay, we need this, this, and this. And like within 5 minutes, this whole group conscience was done. I've never seen one happen that fast. She said, we need a secretary, and somebody volunteered, and everybody voted her in. And then somebody said, we need a treasurer. Somebody volunteered, and everybody voted her in. And then they said, we need a GSR. And I said, and everybody went, DEANNE, because GSRs they're really unappreciated people. And they're people that work really hard, and I know myself when I've been one, it's a drag, you know. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to do this because I don't have any service commitments, and I know that it's like not a very glorified position, but I need a position. I need to be plugged in. And it was really funny because even people like the next day and the next day were saying, you're a GSR? And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm excited about it. And when I went, I was all excited to say, this is, you know, I'm a new GSR here. And they clapped for me and welcomed me. And, you know, again, I got to plug in somewhere, and I was really grateful for that. And, you know, again, with the if you want what we got, do what we do. When I listen to people like Kim and Lori and Pete talk about service and how good they're feeling and get plugged in, and I'm like, I want what they got, so I have to do what they do, you know. So becoming a GSR was like probably pretty little thing, you know, for me to do for my own recovery. But I want to be plugged in. I want to stay a part of. I want to be a part of, and I want to continue to, you know, to fill my recovery, because I believe that we get out of it what we put into it. I remember somebody shared with me, and he had a lot of clean time. He said, you know, he wasn't happy with what he was hearing in meetings lately, and he wasn't happy with what he saw going on lately, and he was talking to his sponsor about it, and his sponsor said, well, if you're not happy with, you know, what you're hearing in meetings, then you need to share. And, you know, make yourself happy with what you're hearing. And if you're not happy with what you see going on around the rooms, then do something about it. I'm not one of those people who will just sit back and have no opinion. You know, I have a really big opinion of a lot of things. And, you know, I can't go in meetings and try to bomb people out or whatever for doing what they're doing. I can really only try to focus on myself and lead by power of example. I work 12 steps and 12 traditions, and I'm going to be learning about the 12 concepts of Narcotics Anonymous. That doesn't mean if you go somewhere else that there's anything wrong with you. You know, I heard this guy share the other day on a recovery tape I was listening to, and he was talking about this particular region, not Central Maryland, but the Maryland, D.C., Virginia area, being a place where people say things a little bit different than other places in Narcotics Anonymous. And all I can do is try to be a power of example. When I say my name is DEANNE and I'm an addict, that covers everything, you know. And when I sit in meetings and talk about my recovery, I don't talk about my sobriety. I talk about my recovery, you know. And I don't want to offend anybody. It's just, you know, what I've learned in the traditions. It talks about being respected and of the house that I'm in. And this is the house that I'm in, Narcotics Anonymous. So I'm going to respect that, and I'm going to talk Narcotics Anonymous talk. If I happen to be out of town and I go to a different fellowship, I'm going to respect their house and I'm going to talk their language, you know, and I understand that. I don't expect somebody with 3 weeks clean to come in here and know that it's not, I don't want to say okay, because it's okay for whatever you say, but, you know, to be real specific about the terminology used, you know, if you're in here, you're in here, and that's all I care about, you know. But what I try to do is just lead by power of example, that Narcotics Anonymous has given me everything I've needed. I moved out of town when I had 18 months clean. I moved to Oklahoma because I was so sick of myself and my life. I thought I could find something different somewhere else. And I went, and I had the most clean time in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I had 18 months clean. And I was looking for a sponsor. can't really get a sponsor with, I mean, at that time, 18 months clean, I was still toxic. If I looked for a sponsor and found one with 16 months clean, she was probably going to be just as toxic. So I ended up having a long-distance sponsor with my sponsor here. And I had to go to a different fellowship for a little while because Narcotics Anonymous wasn't strong there. And they had some other fellowships that I'd never even heard of up here. And people told me that there are other places too, but when I say narcotics, that covers everything, and in our readings it tells us it covers everything. So I wasn't real comfortable down there, and it wasn't much longer after I went through a few experiences in meetings down there that I decided that I was homesick. And I wasn't homesick for my mother or father, and I wasn't homesick for Maryland by far, because I hated Maryland. I was homesick for my foundation. I was homesick for my recovery, for what I found right here in Central Maryland. And it was funny because people were betting that, I'd be back, and they won their bets, and I came back. But I tried, I didn't set boundaries on myself and said, no, Oklahoma's halfway across the United States. I can't try that. That's crazy. I tried it. It didn't work. So what? I tried it, and that's all that mattered. And that's kind of the way I live my life, I went through a major job change about 5 years ago. I used to deal poker and work at these illegal poker games, and I loved it, and I made a lot of money, and I spent a lot of money. And I worked nights. I'd go to work after meetings, and I was living the big life as far as I was concerned. But I got arrested one night, clean. And I was in jail, and they told me they wanted my shoestrings. I was like, I'm not going to hang myself. I'm clean. What am I going to hang myself for? But they said that this is normal procedures in jail. You take your shoestrings out of your shoes. And they had a metal toilet. I was like, metal toilet? Wait a minute, I'm clean. They didn't care if I was dirty or clean. They just said, this is where you're staying for the next 24 hours. And I was like, this can't be happening to me, but, I pay the consequences for my actions. I'm working at an illegal poker game. Illegal, hello. But I didn't care. I was making more money than my parents, As far as I was concerned, I was doing the right thing. But I went through a major job change after I got arrested. Where I was arrested, I was working 5 nights a week, so that income was gone. We shut down. And I was freaking out. I called my sponsor. I said, what am I going to do for a job? I said, I can only do that 1 night a week now somewhere else. And she said, well, I think you might want to drop that night and find a job, a real job where you pay taxes and live life like most of us are trying to. And that was the suggestion that I took. So I opened the newspaper, A, B, and I'm going down accounting, sure, B, whatever, computer, sure. But I found a job, and it said collections, and it said no experience necessary. The pay, I don't even remember what it was, but it sounded like something I might be good at, and I went in and I told, the guy was like, tell me why we should hire you. I said, well, because I like to control things. I love being, the manipulating person. I love, having the power, and I think, as a bill collector, I'll have all those things. He said, yeah, you're right, and I went in and I was collector of the month, my first month there, and I'd never done it before in my life, but I found something I was good at, Now, 5 years later, I'm absolutely burned out. I'm done. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of asking people for their money and then hearing their stories, because their stories that I'm hearing during the day are the same ones I'm hearing people talk about at night, and that's depressing. So now I'm going through the paper again, but I'm starting at D, and I'm working my way down, so I don't know what I'll run into. But I took a risk. I did something I've never done. I had confidence that Narcotics Anonymous taught me how to have, because I never had that, never had any kind of confidence in myself. When I went on that interview, I'll never forget it. My mom taught me a long time ago when I was a teenager to sell yourself on your interview. And I did. I was like, I'll be an asset to your company, and you'll be happy you hired me, and blah, blah, blah. And he was, and he gave me a wonderful recommendation to take to my next job. And now I work for a bank, and I'm the one who calls you up and say, well, we got your car last night, and if you want it back, this is what you got to do. So I'm not so much asking people for money. I'm telling them if they want to have their car back, what they have to do to get it back. And that's not really cool either, because I can hear some pretty sad situations. And then I'm hearing people here lately say, well, what would you do if you were in my shoes? And then I feel really cruddy, because, again, I hear people sharing about some stuff at meetings at night. It's the same stuff I hear during the day. But what I learned is that I can take any risk I want to take, and trust in my God and trust in my network that if I fall, you'll pick me up. About a little bit of insanity. I was in a relationship one time with a guy fresh out of Second Genesis. Never even stepped out of Second Genesis yet, okay? He was living there. his dad knew I was in recovery. He was a poker player, and he said, my son's in Second Genesis, and he knew I wrote poetry about recovery. And he said, I'd like to bring him some of your poems. I said, okay. So I gave him some. He brought them to him. He said, my son would really like to meet you. I said, okay. So I went to Second Genesis on family night, and I met him, and it was love. I was, all of a sudden I felt needed, that I don't know what it was. I felt needed, and I was ready. So I went the next month, and I rented a house, and the next month, and I bought him a car, and the next month he got out, and he had a house to go home to and a car to drive, and then he had to find his own job. It wasn't very much longer after that. We were going to meetings, and everything seemed fine. I went to Florida for my brother's wedding, and it was right after Christmas one year, and I called home, and I was asking him how he was doing, what was going on. He said he was at this casino, and he went to the bathroom, and when he came back, his leather coat that I bought him for Christmas was gone. I said, oh, man, that sucks. That was $400, and I was all believing him because I'm dumb, I'm an addict. I believe addicts, and they tell me good stories. And what ended up happening is I came home, and I went to put my suitcase away in the closet, and there was a bag, and it was a 12-pack of Budweiser with empty beer cans in it, and I thought, you're so fucking stupid. Excuse my language, I probably wouldn't have known that he used had that not been in the closet. So I confronted him. He admitted it. I'm sorry. I said, okay, and I did one of these, brushed it under the rug, everything's all right, go to meetings, pick up a white chip, you'll be fine. And a couple months later, came home one day. I was in the house. He was gone. He came home high, asking me for the rent money. I told him, forget it, because I could tell he was high. And we started having a little wrestling match for the money, and I had it, and I wasn't letting go of it. And before I knew it, I caught his knee in my eye. I ended up with a great big black eye. I got like 2.5, 3 years clean. He got the money. He jumped in my truck, and he left. And I saw him 4 days later. I got a pretty wild paint job on my truck, and when he came home with it, I didn't know what color it was, is how dirty it was. His addiction is, I don't know what it's doing today, but what it was doing then is he drove everywhere. He did everything. I had to go wash out my truck, and I found, crack cans and crack and all sorts of drug paraphernalia in my truck, and I thought, this is a little bit insane. I've got a couple years clean. I'm dating a crackhead, and my life is a little unmanageable. So I called my mom. Actually, what had happened is he did this the night before my birthday, and he came home, and it was like 6 a.m. on my birthday. I'm so self-centered, I didn't care that he had used. I just told him that he screwed up my birthday because we had plans that day, and obviously he was out all night. He was going to sleep all day. I called my mom in tears, and I said, I want to come home. And she said, do you need any help packing? I said, no, I'll be fine. So I threw everything I could in the truck, and I just moved back to Greenbelt. That was in Temple Hills. I just learned that I deserve better. I deserve to be treated like a woman and not like a bank account, a banker. There was a lot of things that were wrong about that relationship, and I ended up having to go see a therapist for a little while just to reassure myself that I deserved better, because I wasn't so sure. Because I kind of thought, I really gave up on a drug addict, and that's not what I've learned in Narcotics Anonymous. But what I learned is what somebody said earlier today, women need to get with the women and men need to get with the men, so I had no business taking care of him anyway. And then the next relationship I was in was just as sick. And it's funny, I like talking about it now just because it's an experience. It can tell me how sick I am. Even with a few years clean. I met this guy at the Laurel Boys and Girls Club, and he didn't even pick up his white chip yet. And, here I was in meetings talking about leave the newcomer alone. And next thing I knew, I was dating one. And the other one at least had 18 months in a protected environment. This one didn't even have a day. But he was a nice little country boy, and he needed somebody to take care of him. And that was my role for the next 9 months. But then one day he got a little frustrated with me and put me through a closet door. And another day in warm August as it was, he picked me up off the floor with his 2 hands by my neck. And this was at lunchtime when I came home for lunch one day. And I couldn't go back to work because of the condition I appeared to be in. And for the next 4 days I had to wear turtlenecks in August. And And again, I thought, you know, something's wrong with this picture. I'm clean and I'm getting beat up in recovery, wearing turtlenecks in August to, you know, cover up the marks and the bruises. And for real, so you didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. And what I've learned today is that I don't have any secrets. I'm in a healthy relationship. I deserve the best. And I think that if you don't think that, you keep coming back, you'll believe it too. Because I think we all do. You know, I can speak for myself, being from where I came from. I'm a real fortunate person that I found Narcotics Anonymous. I'm not going to sell myself short for what I deserve. You know, the sky's the limit, and God has wonderful things in store for me. And for me to say, no, thank you, I don't want it, it's kind of like I'm throwing it right back in his face, you know. And I can't say enough about the God of my understanding. I mean, little miracles happen. Like, me and my husband are in the process of buying a house. And this whole thing went down in like less than 3 weeks. We saw a house. It went on the market 2 days later. We put in a bid. We won the bid. We went to the mortgage company. We set up settlement for the next week. Settlement fell through. And I was like, oh, man. I was all depressed, you know. And I was told, you know, why don't you let things happen as they're supposed to? And it was like I was force-feeding this thing to happen, you know. I was running around meetings talking about, oh, my God, I'm so nervous. And all this stuff's going on. I feel like an adult. And all this, you know, good things are happening in my life. And things were forced to slow down, like the mortgage company didn't get the title from the VA, and other things, you know, crept up and postponed it, and this, that, and the other. But there was something on our credit that had to get paid for, and we had tapped out every resource we had. We were done, and I'm one of these people who will tell you, I have no inheritance, no hope for an inheritance ever. My parents have 6 kids. If it's divvied up, we might get $100 each, because we're just not a wealthy family. And I've accepted that, but then I'll see people around talking about, I got this inheritance, and I got this, and I got that, and then I'll run into that poor me syndrome, but then I'll convince myself I'm not a victim. You know, I've got wonderful things going on in my life. And we ended up, Sunday, finding out that this woman wanted to donate to our getting started, and she paid this bill for us. And it was $2,500. This woman has only seen us one time, ever, you know. And I didn't think miracles like this happened, you know. And this miracle happened in my life last Sunday, because we were on the edge of not being able to get this house for that one reason. We couldn't come up with any more money. And she said, I'd like to help you get started. And I hate to see young people today not have a fair shot. So here. I was shocked, to say the least, you know. And I said, you know, what comes around goes around. And I truly believe that as long as I'm doing the right thing, taking care of my business, cleaning up my side of the street, the rewards keep coming, you know. And I don't know, that was just one miracle. I've heard people talk about miracles before, and it might be monetary, but I never thought something like that would happen for me. I thought for sure we weren't going to be able to get this house because this one bill couldn't get paid, and it did, and that was a miracle. But miracles happen every day, you know. For me to be able to wake up in the morning and see another sunrise. Granted, I don't like the weather right now. I'm not really big on cold weather. But I'm just grateful, you know, that I have the opportunity to wake up another day and you know, go after today as hard as I did yesterday. I definitely believe that the sky's the limit. I'll say it 100 times over because that's my motto. And the other one that goes with that is what I said earlier, is dreams do come true. You can have anything you want in life. I mean, and I don't even sell myself short by saying I don't think I can do whatever. You know, if I want to go and get, you know, a bachelor's degree in being a doctor, it don't matter, whatever. I can do it if I'm willing to do the footwork. So I love it when I hear people say I can't. I said, you can do anything you want to do as long as you're willing to do the footwork. I don't know. I hope I got a message across of any type. Doesn't matter to me whether it was of hope or of faith or, you know, keep coming back. All I'm ever here to say is that, you know, my life was a mess, and today it's a miracle, one after another, only because of Narcotics Anonymous, not because of DEANNE. All I'm doing is showing up and things continue to happen. And I believe it can be like this for anybody. That's just how it's been shown to me up to this point. And I know that when we move, we're going to go through some changes because it's in another area. And I'm not real crazy about it, but I'm not going to stop using the sponsor I have, and I'm not going to stop sponsoring the women that I have in my life. So we're going to get a local phone number, and we're going to get a Washington line, so there won't be any long-distance bills. And, you know, I mean, there are ways around things that can keep me attached to the program, so I don't have to unhook because I moved a half hour away. And the speaker that spoke earlier, right before dinner, he lives in that area, and he's still clean. You know, so that gives me hope. That shows me by power of example it's working for him, going to meetings there. And I'm going to, you know, just try to keep doing the same thing I've been doing up to this point, and I know it's going to keep working for me like it has up to this point. So that's it. I'm done. Thanks for letting me share.